welcome to the bench. I started looking at where my camera used to be, and I'm like, wait, I moved it. It's down here now. Welcome to the bench. I'm your host, Tanith. This is the other host, Horus. How you doing, Horus?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Feeling sore from Ockfest a little bit, I think.
Oh, yeah. I went to practice yesterday, and I'm glad that I did because I ran practice, but my joints hate me for doing that. That was way too early to go back and swing a stick again.
I know.
Oops.
There's like my inner elbows are like hot. There's like a
Yeah.
slight heat to them. But
Elbows
yeah, we're doing garb
burns.
today. We're doing garb today, Misty. I hope you're wearing your garb as well. It's really important. I don't know why, but it is. We have an awesome show for you today. A very sinister show. I'm going to continue making that joke. We're gonna talk about left-handed fighting, both how to fight as a left-handed fighter if you are a left-handed fighter, but then also how to fight against left-handed fighters. But we'll get to that in a little bit. First, we're going to talk about upcoming events. What do you got for us?
Yeah. So this weekend, up in the Rockford area, there is an event called Here There Be Dragons. And I forget the park that it's at, but you can go and fight this Saturday. Next weekend, both Tanith and I will be at War in Indiana. That's a big event in all Belgar. Big battle. There's regen with heralds that walk around that are Valkyries. They regen you. You fight in castles. It's so fun.
It's so good. It's so good. You should go to this
amazing.
event.
Then there's also Zombie Candy Apocalypse, which is hosted by Kador, that is in Rockford, and on October 27th, the weekend after. Winter War is the last big camping event of the season in, I want to say South Carolina?
No. Was it Arkansas or Mississippi?
Arkansas.
No, Mississippi, I think.
I have no
I
idea.
don't know. I think it's
It is
Mississippi.
in the South.
South.
And it is very good because everybody tells me I need to go every year, and unfortunately I can't make it this one. But it is November 6th through 10th. And then the next big camping event, the first one of 2025.
Wait,
is
pause.
in
It's Alabama.
Alabama.
We were wrong
I think I said
several
that.
times. I think you did.
Okay, that was my second guess. Battle for the Ring is January 16th through 19th. I believe that's Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, so you get the day off after it if you have a office job. Or I guess a lot of people do, but not everyone. And that's a lot of fun too. Been several times. This year might even go to, I don't know, we'll see. I'm trying.
We've been wait, I got to point this way. We've been talking and collaborating about possibly doing a bench trip out to Bifter. So,
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So we'll see.
I love Bifter. It's so good.
Let's talk tournament wins. So last show, there were no tournament wins before the previous show and that show.
Mhm.
But then there's just a shit ton of Amtgard tournaments, and I'm like, I'm not doing all this. So I just did the Ockfest ones.
Yeah.
So we've got Oktoberfest 2024 Single Sword Tournament results. Sir Tree Thump from the Emir. Sir Fane from No Quarter, and third place is Sir Glass from the Emir. Oktoberfest 2024 Sword and Board Tournament results. First place, Warlords Sir Peter the Quick from Emir. Second place, Sir Elias from Emir. And who do we have in third place?
I'm not in third place. I didn't fight Glass for that. But top four were all Emir. We were very proud.
Hell yeah. And then these weren't posted on the foam fighting tournament page, but I did some investigative journalism and found out who won the other tournaments. So, well, I just asked Pippin. So, Spear.
To tell people that.
Well, it's because it's courtesy. I have courtesy of the foam fighting group up there, and then this one was courtesy of Pippin. I got to give props. So,
Oh yeah.
first place in Spear was the Batman. First place in the newbie tournament was Arius First place in red was Sir Takis.
Takis.
Takis. That makes
Also, I
more
red
sense.
spar him all the time, so
Hell
I'm
yeah.
very happy that he won.
That's probably why he
I'm
took
sorry
first
for
place.
everyone he hit, though.
Does he hit really hard? Oh, is he
Yeah.
the big guy?
Yeah.
He's the big
He's an
cop
axe
guy.
cop.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. Yeah, that guy
This is
hits like
like-
a fucking truck.
He does it like a truck. I love red sparring him, and I also hate it because my joints are like, I'm afraid I'm going to break my bones.
Yes, you definitely hit me. I moved 3 feet that way. Thank you.
He used to come to practice and swing his axe at me, and then he would snap my sword in half,
Jesus.
like one every practice. And then one practice, I walked up to him, swung, I blocked, he snapped my sword. I was like, okay, it happens. I go get another sword, I come back out. Next fight, swings his sword, snaps my sword in half. I'm like, okay,
Okay.
I can't afford this. You gotta stop. Anyway.
Combat archery. First place, Reaver and Kiba. Nobody knows because nobody was sure who Kiba was.
Kiba.
I think it's Kiba. And then the Four Horsemen tournament, which I caught, and it was so fun to watch. We got Fane, Merrick, Owl, and Luz. Great tournament. So good. So let's start this. Should we start the show? I think we should. Oh, is it Kaiba? It's Kaiba.
I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Like the Yu-Gi-Oh? Hell
Mhm.
yeah.
We have got 2 very special guests today. I would like to introduce Warlord Glen, Mallet of Providence, and Warlord Rafael. Welcome to the show.
Hey, everyone.
Howdy.
So
Hello.
for today's agenda, we are going to say who are Glen and Rafael. Glen and Raph. That's right. I'm supposed to say Raph after the first introduction. What are the basics of lefty fighting? Let's talk about theory, blocking, and defense. Let's talk about movement and its effects. Let's talk about shots and their counters. And then lefty versus lefty crime. So we're going to start things off with Glen. Glen, who are you?
All right. So I'm a lefty warlord from Amtgard, although I also cross game to Dag, Belgarth, SCA, Darkon. Anything where I can hit somebody with a stick, I'm definitely interested. It is worth pointing out that a lot of my friends are rogues. I am not myself a rogue, nor do I want to be a rogue. I am happy not being a rogue. So I play in the Wetlands, which is East Texas. We are pretty much centered between, or I should say next to the Emerald Hills and the Celestial Kingdom. So there's a lot of good fighting out here. I've been playing for, a long time, a couple decades now. And that's about it. That's me. Oh, and I drink a lot of root beer.
So I know the answer to this, but where did you get your fighting name, Glen Mallet of Providence?
That goes back to, I don't even know if the event's still around. There used to be an event put on by the Kingdom of Golden Vale and Amtgard called Great Eastern. And at the second Great Eastern event they ever had, there were a bunch of visiting sword knights and warlords from like Maine Amtgard, where all the great fighters were at the time, which was Iron Mountains in Colorado, all the Texas warlords, that whole region had shown up in force. And we were hanging out with a bunch of them, and there is one particularly well-known Amtgarder called Michael Hammer of God, and the Hammer of God Cup is named after him. And we started kind of making fun of him for his name, right? And he joined in at good nature, right? First of all, like what kind of lame Amtgarder, lame person has a regular generic name like Mike for their persona name? Right? And that the irony there, of course, that my real name is also Glen. And then we started becoming the tools of divinity, right? So I was the Mallet of Providence. He's, of course, the Hammer of God. One of my friends was the Screwdriver of Justice. We had all of these different tools, and we started calling ourselves the Tools. And that was just a little bit of fun we had. And I am a person who will run a joke into the ground. I still think it's funny over 20 years later, so I still go by it.
I love it.
So I'm gonna turn it over to chat. Given that both Glen and Raph are primary Amtgard fighters, there might not be a ton of questions for you guys, and that's okay. I have plenty already. Glen, are you in a unit
I am not.
or
I
a
was
fighting
in,
company?
Yeah, fighting company unit. different name for the same thing. I was not in the company for a long time, and AmpGuard had this event called Banner Wars, which was a company battle. Everybody's company would field a team, and there would be a big battle, and it was for bragging rights about who had the best company. And a lot of times I would fly out to that event, but I didn't have a company, but I was still good enough fighter I was invited to teams. So I ended up fighting a lot of the time with a company called the Green Dragons. And eventually I just ended up joining them since I was fighting with them at events anyway. And I liked the people in it. And then after a certain amount of time, one of my friends, former friend really, he's banned now for good reason. But he was like, hey, let's form a company of just warlords and guys who are about to become warlords and just have this company of like all the best fighters, and that's it. That's our whole criteria. People who love to fight and are really good at it. And that became this company called Asura, and we recruited a whole bunch of warlords. I think at one point we had like 10 warlords in our company. When we would field teams in any sort of competition, it was very unfair. It would just be like, our whole team is warlords. Good luck, guys. But we had some problems because there was no judgment of that guy fights a lot and likes to fight. So we got some problematic people, and that kind of eventually killed the company. And after that, I was like, that was a lot of drama because, of course, I was elected captain right when that came out. So I was the one who got to kick a bunch of people I knew out of the company and then get them banned from AmpGuard. So at that point, I was like, I'm done with this drama. I'm not going to be in any company, no matter how drama-free they seem to be. There could be drama, and I just want to hit people this way.
I think that's very fair, man. Brazen, I want to thank you for the subs, for gifting the subs. That's super awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So I remember there was a keep that like all of the Asura guys had like made a bunch of armor and stuff, and it was like everybody just jumped out on the battlefield with like it was like full plate or something like that and go and flow, and it was fucking wild. Like you guys just tore everybody up. It was crazy. That was a good time. You're kind of known for sword and board because you're kind of a known lefty fighter. What other weapon combos do you like using?
I'll fight with anything. I've always had this very strong belief that if you're going to be a warlord, you should be able to pick up any weapon combo and kill everybody with it. Right? That to me is what separates a person who's a good fighter from someone who's a warlord. Right? Which, for you Belgarth and Dag people, that's our AmpGuard term for someone who has kind of reached the top of the fighting ladder of awards in AmpGuard. So I will fight with anything. I actually won a tournament once fighting with a foam guitar that I borrowed from somebody.
Oh yeah!
I was like, I made this cool foam guitar, and I was like, "Can I use that in the tournament?" But the things I used most often are kind of your standards: sword and board. I do a lot of Florentine. In fact, in SC, I only fight Florentine. So that's just kind of getting away from that sword and board roots. I'll fight down stick with either a sword or with a flail. I fight pole, although not a lot because it just feels unfair when I'm fighting with a pole. I just feel like I'm beating up people like a regular park or regular practice. So I generally avoid that. I've done some greatsword. My last greatsword broke and I haven't gotten a new one. So someday I will get another greatsword because I really enjoyed that. But I haven't been doing very much greatsword. It's probably what I do least. And then there's other weird stuff like fighting with a dagger. I've got a boot knife that I got as a gift from Monkey, who's an AmpGuard fighter. He's in California now.
Yep.
And basically it has a little sheath that you strap to your ankle. And I fight with it as a boot knife. I'll just walk up to somebody like, hey, and then we get close enough, you got to reach down and grab the boot knife and they shank him with it. and my record is 21 kills with that.
Oh, phenomenal. Phenomenal. Well,
there really is. People are not observant. They didn't apparently notice me shanking the other people, and they're like, "Oh, Glen doesn't have a weapon. I'll just hit him."
In one fight?
Well, in a row. It was at an event in the mountains of New Mexico. It's called Gathering of the Kingdoms. It used to be called Gathering of the Clans until we mentioned that name in front of some people of African American ancestry, and they gave us the dirtiest looks ever, and we're like. Just left, and we're like, we should rename it.
Yeah.
Especially the Scottish Highland clans. But if you're this white and also wearing a white tunic, oh God, I made it worse. But
yeah,
you got to be real careful what you say because otherwise you seem like a terrible person, and we don't want to be seen as terrible people. So, but in any case, it was at a battle game there that I was fighting.
Nice. Well, thank you, Cottontail Genova, for following. Appreciate it. Glenn, thanks for telling us who you are. Appreciate it very much. Thank you, Pancake Witch, for whatever those triangle things are. I'm new to Twitch. I know it's important. I don't know what it does. Um, I'm so bad at this. We're going to turn it over to Raf. Raf, who are you?
What an esoteric question. So yeah, my name's Raf. Everyone calls me Raf. I like to introduce myself as Rafael, so people don't think it's like Wrath, like Wrath of God kind of thing, because I get that a lot. I also typically put my name on the back of my hat and back of my tunics, just so people know. But yeah, I've been an Amp-Guard player for, I think, about 23 years now.
Oh, yeah.
I started when I was a 13-year-old kid in California. Had a great time playing it. Retired for a little bit when I was working weekends and stuff like that. And then like in 2017 or 18, said, you know, I want to get in better shape. I need motivation to do that. And what better way to go back and hit people? And I chose, you know, the push for Warlord as like a encouragement, self-encouragement, you know, set a target, and did get that a couple years back. Been teaching the last couple years at SKBC, having a great time with it, and haven't done like a huge amount of travel out of my area. Like I go to Spring War because that's the hub for my fighting company. But aside from SKBCs, I've been to one gathering, one Rackus. I still haven't made it to Keep. That's something I'm hoping to address next year.
Maybe we can talk you into going to Bifter next year. It's in January.
So I've been to one Bifter.
Oh, hell yeah.
I've done Bell twice ever. Once was a practice and once was Bifter.
Nice.
And I had a blast. Definitely. So my secret is I have really bad joints. 2 bad knees, 2 bad wrists. Had wrist surgery on one of them, and the rest I'm trying to put off. And so I'm definitely a bit shy when it comes to the heavier contact sports.
I mean, honestly, like, field battles for sure. And, you know, so this is my experience as an Amp Guarder for 30 years that transitioned to Belgarth. You know, the field combat, sure, it can be rougher. Ditching, it's the same thing. It's the exact same as far as, I mean, you know, as far as there's some minor differences, but like, I wouldn't say that I get any more roughed up in ditching than I would at an Amp Guard ditch, you know, and that's just my opinion, but, you know, it seems to be comparable in terms of what level of contact it is. We're seeing a lot of hype for SKBC in the chat. I'm trying to work with SKBC to get the exclusive announcement rights so that I'll be able to announce the location and date of, you know, and you'll hear it here first. That's what I'm trying to do. It's a maybe. We'll see. But I do want to say, you know, for all Belgrim, you should definitely come out to SKBC. It is a cross-functional event, and I know we're trying to get more Belgarth players out there. One of the best events you can ever go to. Hundreds of people are there, but the thing is every single person there is either there to run the event or to learn how to sword fight. So even though it's not 500, 600, 700 people, it feels like it is, because everyone there is ditching at night. Every single person there, they're all ditching. They're all trying to learn. Everybody's really good about taking shots. Everybody's got a great attitude. It's all a bunch of people that are trying to either teach people how to fight or learn how to fight themselves. So I cannot recommend it enough. Back to Ref. You mentioned your fighting company, which is the Torches. Let's hear about that.
Colloquially known as the Torches, but we're more formally the Chosen. And it's a group of people. I think the company's over 30 years old now at this point, which means I'm only a little bit older. But it's primarily out of Texas. In the last couple of years, have started to expand outside of Texas. And I think like the easy way that I would describe it is like if you took a bunch of people passionate about being good at fighting, you know, to not quite to the level that Glenn described, like we're not exclusive to Warlords, but there are quite a lot of Warlords in the company. And at the same time, it's like a family. So there's a ton of camaraderie, a ton of support, even outside of, you know, LARP related, foam fighting related stuff, which is just so awesome to be a part of a community like that.
We've got a question for you from chat. Glenn asks, why do people call the torches the Bobs?
So yeah, great question, Glenn. Bob being the god of which we are high priests. So you know, our title for a member is high priest. So I'm a high priest of the chosen. And Bob is the deity that does our bidding. And there's some fun history about the company, is that it was initially started as a tongue-in-cheek jab at companies that took themselves too seriously. And so the original symbol, you know, now you can see we've got a pretty fancy torch logo. One of the original contenders was just taking a tennis ball, spray painting it silver, and just dabbing it on the tunic.
I love that.
That's hilarious. We got a shout out to Worm in the chat, so shout out to Worm.
Yeah, Worm's awesome, dude. He's been grinding hard. He's gotten really good in the last couple of years as a fighter, and I think he's right around Warlord. If he's, you know, I don't remember exactly if he's qualified or not, but he's definitely swinging good stick.
Is Worm the younger kid, or who's?
No, he's shaved head, super fit. He was at the SKBC 2 years ago.
Okay.
He's down in Florida right now.
Okay. Who am I thinking of? Is he even a torch?
Who are you talking about?
Who's that? Yeah, I thought he was a torch. That young kid that was at SKBC in Vegas that was really good, and I think he's like Delos Esquire or something. Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, he's an acolyte.
Okay.
So a pledge to the company. Yeah, no, he's out of California. I think he's in I forget if it's Arizona or New Mexico for college, but he's from California Amp Guard. He's just super athletic, super natural talent.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you put someone like that who's also a sponge for knowledge in a room with a bunch of warlords, and you're going to get someone who's quite good.
That guy's going to be incredible. Like he's like 12 years old and he's already fucking incredible. Like he's so good already. Banjax says that that she's been told to go shot for shot with one of the torches. If you mean drinks shots, you fucking don't. Trust me, do not do that. That's a black hole that will rot your liver. They will be dead sober and you'll be passed out. Don't do it. Do not recommend. Hang out with them. Drink with them. Sure. Shot for shot? Absolutely not.
I think there's like a Surgeon's General warning about that.
It's a bad idea. Oh, one last question. I got one last question for you. The name Rafael, where did it come from?
That's a great question. Did someone tell you to ask that?
No, I try to ask everybody.
Okay. So I started when I was 13. I was a pretty shy, geeky kid in school at the time.
In Amgard? No.
Right? And I found out about the game because one of my classmates in Japanese language class had me come over to his house, and he's like, look, we could do this fun sword fighting thing, and dragged me out to it. And I thought it was super cool. And I came up with this amazing Japanese persona name. And I had met a few people, like right as I showed up, I got introduced, like friends of friends. And half of them were introduced with real names, half with persona names. And so I was super confused on like what's the cultural norm here. And a battle game was getting teams picked for it, and I stood up to be picked. And someone asked, "What's your name?" And I was like, I hesitated, right? And the backstory that makes the next part make sense is my mom was so supportive about me checking this out that in the week between me finding out about it and me going out for the first time, she had made me quilted cloth armor to wear. And it happened to be olive green and looked kind of like a turtle shell.
No, no, no!
I think you know where the story goes from here.
That's such a classic fucking Amtgard story. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my
so
God.
It's stuck since day one. And
That's amazing.
I think more people call me Raph than my real name, even outside of the game at this point.
Wild. That's awesome. That's so good. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, somehow we got to follow that story. Let's get started, shall we? We're going to have Glenn take it away. What are the basics?
All right.
Being
Well, the
left-handed.
basics. Well, there's a couple things basic you're fighting as a lefty, right? The probably the most important thing. I'm actually going to skip over our first bullet item because I feel like this is more appropriate for rafting as that one. But it's to focus on lanes, right? When you're left-handed, most of the time you're fighting a righty. So right away you should realize that you're smarter than your opponent. Fighting a righty. And so because of that, you have to be aware of two things. One, they're going to do dumb things. And two, you're going to be hand matched with them. My left hand, so if I'm fighting sword and board, it's going to be fighting their right hand where their sword is. Right? If I'm fighting Florentine, we have sword in both hands, but they have a dominant hand. And most Florentiners below a certain level have an attacky hand and a blocky hand. Right? And they'll throw some stuff with their offhand, but if you make them twitch and throw a shot, they'll throw with their primary hand. Right? So it's very much focused on the handedness. And that also means then the control of the inside lane is more important. And when we talk about lanes, imagine actually I've got 2 pens. Here we go. Oh, 2 pens. So these are my little swords, right? And if we talk about lanes, anything that is between my sword and me in this area, this is the inside lane. You are inside my guard. If you are outside over here on the outside of my weapon, right, you are in the outside lane. And when you're hand matched, it becomes really important that you control that inside lane. Because as soon as your hand goes to that outside lane, you have given them control of your arm, your body, and a lot of ability for shots. And it's hard to get back to the inside lane because the inclination is to block and bring your hand in. So your sword tip comes out, which puts it out of line and out of space, and it brings your handle in. Like, oh, I've got this block, right? And this is great if someone's clubbing you with a pole arm, or you're an SCA and they're about to blast you in the face with a 2-pound can stick. Bringing it across your body is very strong framing, right? But other than that, it's a crappy shot because there's no good riposte to this except a flat snap to the head. You can't do that in any of the games we're talking about here. So don't do that part. So you don't have good riposte from there. So reclaiming that inside lane becomes very important. So that is, and that applies going up as well. If you're fighting someone and they want a high cross, if you're under them, you are inside their guard again and can come in and throw inside their body. Whereas if you're above them, you have to reach all the way over them and they can just keep pushing you higher, right? Reaching you up towards God. So that's the short version of lanes. So beyond that, a lot of our foundation stuff is still the same, right? If you're a lefty, your feet still work the same way. Footwork's still just as important. Your footwork works the same way. There is a little bit potentially of difference in footedness, right? Those of you who played sports where you kick a ball like soccer, or I can't think of sports where you kick a ball, but imagine there's other sports where you kick a ball. If you played hockey, you kick the puck sometimes with your skates.
Football.
So in any of those cases, you generally have a dominant foot. I'm left-handed, but I am right-footed. Right? I kick with my right foot, which is pretty common, actually. So that can maybe some difference. I've never given any thought into figuring that out. But Brett, who's a warlord in Dallas, he now mostly does the wearing armor and bashing each other game, whose name I've just totally blanked on. But he's very successful at that. But he actually mentioned that once, and something that's always in the back of my head to think about, but never done anything with, is does footedness impact how you move? I don't know. But beyond that potential issue, your movement's still the same, blocking still the same, your structure for your blocks is still going to be the same, the way you generate power is still going to be the same, which is probably a whole nother Bellegarth bench, right? Because Tater just had this podcast talking about how body mechanics don't matter, and your power's going to your legs. I totally disagree with him, but that's a different talk, and that's something definitely I think an interesting topic, but I don't want to derail us there. But basically, all of that stuff stays the same thing. So the real change is that the angles for your hands, right, and the angle of your defense, right. If you've got a shield, how your shield is matched up is going to matter, because if you just go straight squared up, then my shield is blocking attacks from your shield. And even in Bellegarth or Dag, where you can shield bash me, I don't care if you hit me with my shield or hit me. It still doesn't kill me. It's not something I care about a lot. So how I angle my shield and how I angle my foot position is going to also have a bit of impact. And I've actually prepared for this question. So you can now see this piece of paper. And and this is our lefty here, right? So we've got little swords. This is our little guy. He's got his head right here, right? If he is fighting squared up against we'll make him blue because he's sad that he's a white.
Glenn, you've got to draw upside down. Your camera's inverted. There you go.
There we go. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So, so there we go. There's my righty, right? My shield, or his shield, and my shield are just fighting each other. Oh, black pen back. Yeah, I got a lot of pens. And our swords are just fighting each other, right? But if I change that angle and I say I'm going to angle myself a little bit, got my board, got my sword, got my head, right? And he is going to stay there because he's a righty. He's not smart enough to change, right? That's that here, right? Notice my center lines still haven't changed, right? The center of Glen is still roughly on a line with the center of the righty. But now I'm fighting his sword, right? And you generally don't change this much. This is like a 30-degree change. You're usually talking 5 degrees. It's not very noticeable until someone really points it out. But by changing these angles, I can now fight their sword, and my shield is now doing a better job of blocking their sword, as opposed to not doing a lot up here. So there's a little bit about how angles are going to change that becomes important. But beyond that, a lot of our foundations are going to be the same thing. And I'll pass the next. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'd even argue that, like, those are variations that are specific to it, but, like, the foundations are the same in that, you might make those variations in a righty versus righty fight anyway, just because of differences in your equipment or your opponent's height or something like that. But you're not going to be doing anything drastically different, like holding swords upside down or, using completely new body mechanics that are unseen by other players. I have to plug Sir Draknar's solution to being a left-handed fighter, because he's a sword knight from maybe 30. I think he got his sword belt 30 years ago, something like that. One of the founders of the Chosen. He is left-handed, and the first instruction he gives any left-handed fighter is pick up the sword, put it in your right hand, and then now you're better. He actually does not fight left-handed, even though he is left-handed.
When you were saying Sir Draknar's left-handed, I was like, he is? I'm like thinking back to the times I fought. I'm like, no, he's not. Okay, I'm sure Raph knows more than I do about this, but I'm like, he's not fucking left-handed. That's interesting. Okay, all right.
But so I love throwing that joke out there. But I think one of the key, like, fundamental differences is that left-handed fighters have an advantage by chasing familiarity for things that right-handed players are less familiar with. Mm-hmm. I and a right-handed fighter fighting me have the exact same shots available to us as a mirror fight, but I've done them more than they have, and that just inherently gives me an advantage. And I think that's where a lot of the kind of higher baseline, like people will say, oh, you're better because you're left-handed, right? And like that implicit advantage, I think that comes with a lot of just we're grinding out more sword side hip scoops than you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're just simply doing it more. That's just what it is.
No.
Is that wrap us for the basics? I'm going to let you guys drive this a little more than usual because me and Horus are just dumb right-handers. So
I want to talk.
Oh, talk! Serve it up. Let's hear it.
So I actually spent the first 4 years of my fighting career. People would be like, "Oh, this Horus guy's pretty good," and then I would go fight right-handed people, and they'd be like, "I don't understand why he's losing." Because he fights me and he does so well. Because everyone that I fought was left-handed. And so I would fight like really good left-handed fighters, and they'd be like, "Damn, this guy's pretty good." And then I'd fight right-handed people who were like middling, and I'd just get slaughtered because I didn't know how to reach around their shield at all. And I've always thought of left-handed fighting as like when you get to fight lefty-righty. That is, it's like more honest because your shields aren't quite in the way. Like you could move them in the way and do stuff, but like your swords get to fight each other. And so you're always like fighting for this position, and you don't have to do anything weird to get around each other's shields. Like if they swing at you, you can just hit them. Like as soon as you put your arm beyond the shield, you're in range. So I think that's like the big thing that like right-handed people like don't internalize fighting left-handed people. Like it's 99% the unfamiliarity, and 1% you're in way more danger when you're fighting a left-handed person because they're way closer to hitting you because their shoulder is closer to you, and they're used to that and you're not.
Yeah, I think one thing a lot of people don't pick up right away, and you can kind of see it in the diagram that Glen did, is when a right-handed player is fighting a right-handed player, they're going across their planes of defense. And we'll talk about that more when you go into the theory and stuff, but like you're basically trying to fight past each other, right? Like jousting almost. And with left versus right mirror fighting, it's a lot of we're kind of ignoring a large portion of the mirror and then fighting around those edges in a way that's much more face to face, I think. Just like you just did ours.
So Horus, it's actually really funny that that's your story, because when I came up with Wilhelm. We fought each other all the time. Wilhelm was a left-handed player that achieved Warlord as well. And so like when I was earlier in my career, I'd have like this same situation. I'd go to events and I'd fight Wilhelm or some other lefties, and they're like, wow, that 10th, it's really good. And then I'd just fight right-handed players and I'd just get my ass kicked, because it was like, because that's what I came up on. That's what I knew, was fighting lefties. Very similar experiences, actually.
Yeah.
I actually did that to the park I used to fight at when in Florida, because I like to fight a lot. And I used to do, I want to say most of the fighting, but I fought so much that most people at that park had a lot more experience fighting me than fighting each other. And so they all got good at fighting lefties because they were fighting me all the time. And I remember them going to an event, and there was this lefty who was decent, right? And he was just tearing people up. He's like, I'm doing great. And then one of our guys went over there and fought him and just murdered him. Right? And he was like, oh, that's rough. And then another one of our guys went over there and fought him, murdered him. And then the third guy goes there and fights him and murders him. And unfortunately for him, the third guy was our newest player. So he's like, man, how long have you been fighting? The guy's like, oh, I've been doing this for 3 months now.
That's wild.
Oh, man.
We got a question that, it's a pretty specific question, but, I want to field questions from the chat. Pickles asks questions for the mutants. Can the AK-47 be modified to work on a sword and board lefty if thrown by a sword and board righty?
I have a fun answer to this, but I'm also curious what Glen's opinion is.
I don't know what the AK-47 is. It sounds like a spin shot, and I don't do spin shots.
It is a Delos shot, but I don't think it's a spin.
It's not
AK-47 is you smack their shield on left-hand side, so you're hitting their shield side shoulder, but you're just hitting their shield. Then you raise your hand, right, up, bring their guard up, and then you reverse wrap them.
I
And you
have a
immediately
similar
start to
shot
do it.
that I use to kill legged people when I'm feeling lazy. And it's not quite the same thing. Also, I'm a little suspicious that this is a Delos shot because there's no
Yes.
spinning in it. So you're like, "It's a Delos shot. There's no spinning." I was like, someone's lying to me. And maybe it's after you do that reverse wrap, then you spin out.
Yeah, you could spin out of it.
Mhm.
That's a great plan.
But so keep in mind that I'm hand matched to you, right? So what I will do is I will throw across to that board shoulder, right? But again, I'm not going for the shoulder. I'm going for a shot that looks like I'm going for the shoulder. And what I do is I bounce off the board and I come back through here. And the goal is you throw, you draw a counter, which is going to be a straight chop to the arm. You come back, you catch that with your sword, you block aggressively to push it out, and now you've got the inside lane, and then you chop into the armor body.
And there's a video on Glen's
If someone's leg, you can just draw that shot. If you're down an arm and you're, this is a great shot for righties, because a lot of times if you trade an arm for a leg, you've traded your sword arm for their leg. Now you're a lefty, they're a turtle. You go beat, they throw, you block, you chop, you win.
Makes sense. Raph, what's your funny answer?
So I can spill the beans on this shot a little bit because Delos is in my company, and maybe four years ago or something, I was living in Texas for a year and a half and got to train a lot with him. So AK-47, the AK stands for Arthon Killer, and Delos made this shot to counter Arthon. And my funny answer is that it's not that the AK-47 can be modified. It's that the AK-47 is the right-handed version of a two-shot lefty. If I, as a left-handed shield fighter, threaten your sword hip and your shield shoulder with the high cross, the combination of the AK-47 hitting your sword shoulder with a double board side threatening your board shoulder, it achieves the same effect of where your opponent doesn't know which you're committing to until it's too late.
That's cool.
Makes sense.
So you could totally, like, smack sword side, hit their shield, especially if they like do this a lot, and then like fake them up, and then reverse wrap. But you're really styling on them if you're trying that, because man, do you not want to lean over and put your whole shoulder and side like this in front of a left-handed person who's then standing taller than you and hitting you like this? Like, I don't care what you're doing with your shield. Like, it's generally not a great plan.
Yeah, I will say there is a righty warlord up here who has managed to land that on me once or twice, but I wouldn't recommend it as a high percentage shot.
Makes sense. Who's the warlord? Just curious.
Critias.
Oh, I love that guy. That guy's so cool. I met him at Keep, I think 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the agenda, shall we? We all done with the basics. I want to make sure we're done.
Unless
Yes.
Horus has more questions.
Oh, we good? Up next is theory, blocking, and defense. Take it away. Who would ever like to go?
I'll start. I like talking. So our guard position, and this is, I'll help compare this to righties so righties can wrap their little brains around it. There's going to be a lot of anti-righty smack talk coming from me over here. Because pretty much every one of my friends, with very few exceptions, is a righty when I play any of these phone fighting games. So your guard position, if you're a righty, you've generally got your board, right? And then your hands up here because you're looking to block the high cross that everybody loves so much. And that's great if you're fighting somebody who's same hand as you. But when you're hand matched, what that does is that opens up your arm and also your ribs. So you just need to bring that hand back down. Right? So when you're a lefty, or if you're a righty fighting a lefty, you want to have your hand with your forearm parallel to the ground, right? And that is blocking your sword side hip, right? And you'll also be blocking your arm. You want to have the elbow tucked in because if your arm is flat, let's see if I can get flat facing the camera. There we go. Flat. You notice there's no angle. It's easy to just whack that. Whereas if I've got my hand in or a hand out with my elbow in, gives me a little bit better angle on that so people can't come around, right? They have to be swinging way over here rather than swinging straight in through here to get past my hand. So that's going to be our hand position. If you're a lefty fighting another lefty, keep in mind you can now be a righty and bring that hand up to watch out for that high cross. That is why righties can dark side each other because they have that hand high and they open up there a couple shots. Be aware of that. But key thing there is hand down instead of hand up. That's for sword and board. Florentine is a whole different animal. Your stance will be the same as a lefty or a righty, shouldn't matter. And single sword, again, your stance is going to be the same lefty or righty. So it's really just sword and board, I feel like, where the hand differs a lot. Feet, again, same thing as it is as a righty. You want your feet in that little bit of, look, it's more, Brazen seemed to really like the video, and luckily, I've got a lot of paper. You want to have your feet, boop, right? A little bit of an L shape there, right? This being your body here, right? It doesn't have to be 45 degrees. Some people do some people do a little bit less there. But the idea is you want to have a wide stance because if you are fighting, you have to worry about people hitting you not just from the front, and doing Belgarth or Dag, not just running into you from the front, but running into you from the angle or the side, or if they're being very unsportsmanlike, from the rear. But you want to have stability in all directions. That also gives you the ability to move in all directions. Your feet should be pointing forward and either forward to the side or at like a 45-degree angle. Right, but you should not have basically like a position where you're running both feet forward, because if you got both feet forward, like you're going to walk forward or run forward, you lose a lot of your lateral mobility, and lateral mobility is really important in fighting. For your legs, you want, this is where we're going to see if I can draw a person because my drawing skills aren't great, but you want your front leg, slight bend, you want the back leg, slight bend, right? There's like your squatting, right? Here's a person there. But you want a bit of bend in your knees. You should be able to reach down and pick up a piece of candy off the ground without moving your feet, right? And without losing bounce. It should be very easy to go up and down. You should not have your knees past your toes, right? Your knees should be over your toes. So here's my shoe, here's my shoe, here's my shoelaces, right? My knee can be over my shoelaces, but should not go past that. You do not want your legs to be straight. You don't want foot, knee, leg. All right, we'll give them big thighs. They don't skip leg day. But we don't want a straight leg because a straight leg has no energy in it. You have to then bend the knee to move it, right? You can work yourself forward or backwards, but you have to do some sort of straightening of the leg to move generally. So you want to have some bend in that knee so you can start your motion, right? Your weight should be centered. You'll notice this person I drew here, their weight, if I drop an arrow straight down, why is that showing up? Okay. But if I drop that arrow straight down, that is right in the middle of their body. They have 50% on the back leg, 50% on the front leg. And that is important because if you have your weight all in one leg, you can't lift that leg up very easily. You have to shift your weight, which means moving your whole body before you move your feet. So that is kind of the core elements of guard position drawn with Sharpies on a piece of paper. Trying to wrap anything to that, and if not, we can move to the next subtopic here.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in because I know you'd be fine teaching the whole SKBC Foundations class on here if we don't stop you. But I think, like one of the common questions specific to left-handed guard is like, what should I change, right? I'm a righty. I'm used to fighting righties. When I go to fight lefties, what should change about my guard? And starting with feet, people say, should I switch feet or things like that? Really, that should come down to whatever you're comfortable doing, right? Like the big difference is where the lanes are. And so, I've spent years at a time fighting left foot forward. I've spent years at a time fighting right foot forward with sword and shield. And one of them, Brazen just noticed the hat, which has a torch.
It's amazing.
So for Glen and Raf, when Brazen says trolls, we need this guy. There's a monster in Belgarth called a hat troll. I am in fact one of them, and it basically, the garb for a hat troll is that you have to wear a hat. If you're wearing a hat, you can be a hat troll, and that's what hat trolls are. They look like people with hats on, and so it sounds like Brazen's trying to recruit you. Just saying.
I think I've been one this whole time.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Don't let them steal your hat though.
Oh no! Yeah, no one gets this hat.
Which do you prefer to fight, shield foot forward or right or sword foot forward?
So I think range, like at what range you like to play, is going to be a very big influence to this. Like I did very intentional segregation. Like when I said I fought for years with 1 foot forward, I wasn't joking. I said, okay, the next X amount of time. But that was to get familiarity. So when I'm in that position, I've got a lot of confidence. Primarily today, if you line up against me sword and shield, you're going to see me shield foot forward. But unless you give me some just cold shot gimme opportunity, by the time one of us is actually dead, I'll probably be 8 inches away from you and sword foot forward, because I will have closed and stepped into it. And so I like a shield foot forward giving me the switch foot close distance. But for people who aren't going to move their feet as much, then having your sword foot forward gives you a lot more kind of out the gates aggression capabilities.
Yeah. I really like that. I
And
kind of
then-
do the same thing, like switch between depending on what they're gonna do. I like to start shield foot forward in case they really like to stab it. Like,
Yep.
I want to have more time to see it coming and try to dodge. But then, if they're not gonna move at me, then I'm just gonna step forward with my right really hard and like kill them.
We have a question
For me,
from.
it actually varies up a lot. If I'm fighting with a strap, I fight with it was probably originally like 29 or 30, but it's very old, so the outer inch is just decorative, and as soon as you hit it, it mushes flat, so it's a little smaller than it looks like. But with that, I generally fight shield leg forward, unless I'm get stuck fighting in a line. Like when I used to go to Wolfpack opener, they love to cram the field in so everybody's fighting shoulder to shoulder. And at that point, I switched to sword leg forward, because I'm really just I want to protect.
Uh-oh. We lost everybody. Chat, did you lose everybody? Hold on, guys. I'm bringing you back.
Kenneth disappeared from Streamlabs for a second. Had
Yep.
to bring us all back in.
Bringing you back. I hate this. Raph, you're back.
Yay.
Everybody's back. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
It was a Reddit conspiracy.
It
I just saw Brazen's comment. It's probably the first time a guy's ever said, "Oh yeah, it's smaller than it looks." But as I was saying, when I'm fighting regularly, shield leg forward. But if I'm fighting like line fighting, where I'm kind of crammed in with people, I will switch to sword leg forward, and so I can just do a lot of single sword. Draw shot, block, riposte, draw shot, block, riposte. If I'm fighting with a punch, then I actually fight sword leg forward, and I'm doing again a lot more single sword, and I'm using my punch base as a hand block to cover my secondary and tertiary returns.
Yeah. Just like
We're on an ad break right now, so I'm gonna keep taking questions while we're on the ad break. So Amp-Guarders primarily use round shields. Do you guys ever experiment with different shapes of shields? I know in Bell there's a lot of heaters. There's a lot of different shapes. Does that change your stancing if you're using a different type of shield?
Well, my experience, because I've used other shapes occasionally, like my punch is an oval, because with a punch you've got a grip, so you've got a lot more strength this way up and down than you do crosswise, right? So I want a little bit more length that way, because I don't have to worry about people levering it out of my hand with a big blast, hit it on the edge and push it. So oval there. I don't like things with corners, because I throw all segments around my shield, and my arm is attached to my shoulder. But you like basic geometry, it makes circles, right? Because the radius of the circle is the length of my arm. So if there's a square, it interrupts my ability to throw shots in that area, and I have to come up and around, and it shortens my reach over that one particular bump in my shield, and I don't like that. There is a little bit of advantage you get from corners. They do give you a little bit extra protection on that side. They give you a harder stop when you're blocking shots that might otherwise skip up or down your shield. So there is an advantage to corners, but I don't care about that advantage enough for it to be worth the trade-off. Also, I'm pretty mobile, even with a strap shield, as far as moving it around the block. And so what I would get from a corner, I can also get by just projecting my shield a little bit further. Because my shield actually straps at my hand. Actually, it straps here on my hand, here, across my first knuckle. And then the other strap is like just below my watch. Right? So that I have a very short length there, so it allows me to actually flex my shield in and out, almost like a punch, but with all the stability of a strap.
Yep,
Okay.
I do mine the same.
Raph, have you ever experimented with different shapes of shields or anything like that?
So never by choice. I picked up other people's gear or been visiting a Bell Day or something, and have through that. I think a lot of the prevalence of round shields in Amtgard is driven a lot by the rule set. Like, Glenn pointed out, there's a body mechanic advantage to being able to easily reach around your shield. And also just, in Amtgard, because the headshots aren't a concern like they are in other games, we don't have to worry about stuff skipping up as much. And just, there's no real advantage that we strongly benefit from for especially like the kite or square shields that we see more commonly in Bell and other games.
I think maybe the speed of Amtgard combat is faster. The swords don't have a minimum weight to it, so it's just naturally going to be a touch faster. And when you're manipulating a shield that has a shape to it, there's time in that. And a lot of fighting, especially at the high end of Amtgard, is not just like getting your block in the way, but anticipating where that shot's going to be. You don't have time to move your stuff in the way sometimes, and so a round is just going to lend itself more to that anticipatory style of fighting, I think. We're off the ad break. Have we covered everything as far as theory, blocking, and defense? Anything more to touch on there?
So I think we can go a little bit more into the sword hand blocks.
Okay.
Because I think that's a major difference, at least in my opinion, for mirror fights versus a cross match. I know, Glenn is a major proponent of use your sword hand to block your sword side. And I love to disagree with that, because in a hand match game where rough numbers, 2/3 of our targets are going to be on the sword side, I don't always want to sacrifice my ability to throw a shot just because I'm busy defending. And so I do a lot of movement with my shield. Like Glenn said, I have mine strapped very forward. So, I've got the front strap is in my hand and the back strap is, just up the wrist a little bit. And in the past, I've been, like I started out as a Florentine fighter and did that for a couple of years before I ever picked up a shield. And so I've got a lot of offhand movement that I would much rather, take a block with my shield over here if it lets me also kill you at the same time. And I know Glenn, has a very differing style.
Yeah. And I will say that as a fellow lefty, Rap is, of course, right. He's very clever, very smart guy, knows a lot. So I'm not going to say he's wrong, because he's not. But there's a part of that, I think, is due to a difference in physicality. Right? I actually have a condition called hypoflexibility. Right? When I reach across, this is it. Right? I have to start turning my body to come farther across the net. Right? I don't have a lot of flexibility, so if I want to bring my shield across, I have to do a full twist of my upper torso to do that. So that, to a certain degree, causes me to do a lot of sword side blocking. And I do block with my shield. I always liken a lot of the rules I get for fighting like the rules for English, right? There's rules we have in English, like capitalize your sentences, use periods, right? There's all these rules, and they're there because as a baseline, you want to follow them. But once you've mastered those rules, you can break them for specific effects, right? E.E. Cummings is a famous poet who never used capitalization. It's not because they didn't know what capitalization was, it's because they wanted to accomplish a specific literary effect by not capitalizing their poetry. And fighting's the same way. Block with your sword and your sword side is a hard and fast rule until you're good enough to know what you're sacrificing when you give it up, right? And why you're doing it, and have a good reason for it. And Raph, as a lefty, is definitely smart enough and good enough to break the rule whenever he sees fit.
Hell yeah.
Love it.
Such a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
That was what I was gonna say, is that like you should do both. But that is the rule. Like they swing at your sword side, you got to be able to block with your sword hand. Because also if you can't do that, they're gonna use that against you. They're always gonna know that if they fake, you have to move your shield to block their shot. So you need to be able to block with your sword hand. But then if you get people, once you know that and you can do that, then if you're patterning people and they're swinging at you and they think you're going to block with your sword hand and they do it to stick your sword hand there, and then you just stick your shield in the way and hit them, like that's when you got them. So that's the rule, and you want to know when you can break it, because breaking it is totally going to get you wins.
It's kind of like when we teach people Florentine too. We say, you know, your right sword's your right side, your left sword's your left side, never cross. And then once you start getting higher end on Florentine, then you start throwing some crosses in there to mess with people and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I think options is a big way to win. Like the more you can do, the less your opponent can predict, the more you can choose something that gives you a higher percentage. And being stuck into, well, I only have one way of doing something is not how you're going to get there. And you know, going back to the guard positions a little bit, one thing a lot of people don't even realize is, like, if you look at striking your opponent's forearm and their elbow to hand position isn't considering what angle that your sword is coming from, because as a lefty, you know, it's now coming from the wrong side. You know, just minor adjustments like that are really critical. One of the biggest things that I like to do at the lefty class at KBC is have everyone line up against a lefty as a righty, or a righty against a lefty, and look at what their shield is covering against their opponent. And a lot of the times there's not a major change to be made, but shifting the shield towards the sword side a little bit more to get it more involved, and adjusting the angle. So, like, imagine if the center of your shield's projecting a beam and you were to point that beam at your opponent's sword hand, right? Like, just that rotation creates this much larger surface area that your opponent's sword now has to overcome to be able to hit you. And, you know, it's like an epiphany for a lot of students getting just those minor corrections.
I got a question from the chat. They want to ask about defending your legs. If there's any differences necessarily between maybe how a righty would defend their legs or not.
I would say I'll give the wrong answer and then I'll let Glenn give the right answer. To hit my leg, because we're hand matched, your arm has to get pretty close to where I can hit you. Mm-hmm. And so in almost every case, I will let you hit me in the leg, and I will hit you 3 times while I'm dropping.
Mm-hmm. And Bob will not forgive you for that, because
I was going to say,
mad at leg shot.
Is this the torch that leg shots don't work on? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
No, it's a matter of honor that we assume no one wants to take leg shots, and once you throw it, you know, then the hate comes out.
I was actually fighting a jugging tournament once, which is an amp card version game, comes from the jugger. Anyway, the point being is that you have a position called the quick, you have armed with just a dagger, and I was the quick on my team, and Draknar was the quick on the other team, and we both start out, and as soon as the fighting starts, Draknar stabs me in the leg with his dagger. And I was so offended that a torch had opened with a shot to my leg that I just backed it off. I was just like, what the hell are you doing?
That's funny. That's funny. Disrespect. Ultimate disrespect.
It was disrespectful. Yeah. So my comment on blocking legs really is that below about mid-thigh, I don't block my legs. The part of that, again, is my lack of flexibility, but also my feet move, right? No one nailed them to the ground, so I will move my feet and get them out of the way. And that is my primary response to leg shots. If I'm really close to you and you throw a leg shot, I'm generally close enough that I can reach down and very aggressively jam out your shot by reaching into your space, so I can get your hand before, I don't have to block your sword, I just have to block your hand, right? And I've got long arms, so I'm just going to reach and jam into your space and jam you out before your sword gets to my leg. And then I've also got the inside lane, and then I can hit you in the body, right? Mm-hmm. Or if I'm feeling vindictive, I can hit you in the leg. But that would be my response if we're really close, and then I obviously don't have time to back out. But if I'm at any range where I can open range further to not get hit, I will open range instead of trying to block a shot. Because if I don't, and I bring my guard down, now my upper body is available. Mm-hmm. Right? And there are a whole bunch of feints, including the dark side, where you bring their guard down, and then you hit them somewhere in the upper body. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to be a person who goes, ah, and then gets hit in the body.
Makes sense.
So that is my response to blocking legs. Below about mid-thigh, you should do it with forward. And certainly below your knee, unless you're Brett or Jamie, the two most bendy people I know, you should never be blocking with your equipment below your knee. Yeah. So you should be. There is that. That's what is that? It comes from Saber, right? It's that 6, whatever number that is.
Yeah.
There's a block that you come down, and I do fight rapier as well. I fight everything. I fight rapier as well in SCA, and I will throw that block because people can stab you in the toe and win, which seems lame to me. I think it's cheating.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do throw that block there, but that's also because the weapons are really fast, they're really narrow, and they're faster than me. I'm slow, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm a super fast guy. I am the slowest fighter on any given field. So I don't have time to move my whole body out when you're coming after me with a 5-foot rapier.
I did that, but I also never actually do that versus a lefty. Like this block you're only ever gonna get if you swing at somebody's leg and then they try to return at after, and when you hit them in the leg, then as your hand's coming up, you just let the sword kind of drag so that you end up like this, but down towards your legs, and then they swing at you and they either hit you in the hand trying to hit you in the hip, or they hit your sword instead of your leg, and then you come back up and now you've successfully leg shot them righty versus righty and you're alive and you haven't taken any damage.
Oh, yeah.
But I was gonna say that legs are very weird because you're more open, you swing legs. Everything that you've both said is very true, but also because you're more open, it is I don't know how to phrase this. It's kind of worth threatening legs because you can get responses out of a lefty that they would not give you if you try to hit something else. People read, if you don't actually know how to throw a hip wrap, people read throwing at their leg as a hip wrap. So you can draw a response to where they might throw, or they might block or do something for a hip wrap that you can't actually throw. And then you can hit them in the shoulder or something like that. Legs are very weird, but if you can get them, it's just not great. It's a low percentage shot.
Yeah, and I think part of that goes back to as a lefty, we're seeing it more than you are, seeing that matchup more than the righties are, right? So it's a lot easier for me to tell just from reading the start of your shot, is that going low, or is that going for my hip? Because I've seen a lot of hip shots. I've thrown quite a lot of hip shots, and so the lefties are going to be really familiar with that.
But in that vein, if you don't want to get hit in the leg and I want to live and you have an advantage on me, I can just go I'm going to throw for your leg, and if you're Glen, you might back up thinking I don't want to get hit in the leg, even though you're going to kill me for it. And so you can survive that way. So that's kind of the only way that I really think about legs in the lefty matchup is can I survive because I threatened to injure them for it?
Yeah, and we're definitely not against legs. Leg shot is a valid shot. People who are don't throw leg shots, that's actually, I don't even like that for practice. I used to fight when I was up in Ohio with Arxadia. He's an Emir. You should know who he is. But for the rest of the people, man, who he is. But I fought with Ark for quite a while. And we were fighting on this tennis court because we fought 5 days a week. But we fought on a tennis court that was covered in snow and slush. So we didn't want to take legs. So we stopped taking legs. And then he and I drove out to a tournament together. And we got there a bracket late. I think we still took first and second. But we showed up a bracket late for this tournament. And the very first fight, I fought a person that hit me in the leg. I called leg and then ran them down and killed them. And they were like, I thought I hit you in the leg. And I was like, you did. And they were like, then why didn't you take it? I was like, oh, right. So what we switched to doing, and it's something I like to practice when you can't take legs because of that. Well, Anchor has posted that. But if you, for some reason you can't, we did leg is death, right? A leg shot kills you.
Jesus.
And that also really balances, like, because if Ark armed me, I don't want to lose, right? Then he has to be really worried about me hitting him in the leg, right? So it refocuses fighting on defense for legs. But I'm definitely pro leg shot, especially for newer players. If I have a board, newer players can't even see anything to hit much except my legs. So throw legs all day. No complaint. I'll never complain about someone legging me.
I'm gonna keep us moving along. And let's start talking about movement and its effects.
Raph, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to talk about here is closing, because when you're a cross match righty on righty, and you close in to your opponent, a lot of things don't necessarily change, right? Like the angles are still there, even if you close deeper to one side or another. It's a lot easier for the cross-match player to just kind of trace that and keep the relative guard positions the same. And so you're looking for a lot more about, like, faking out movement, things like that. With lefty on righty, righty on lefty, we're already starting with, almost no defense on our sword side. And so if I step into your sword side, which is where a lot of the lefty on righty combat is going to be, where we're aggressing toward that sword side, it's a huge shift in your defensive capabilities, because you're suddenly now exposed. Like, it's almost like I said, hey, why don't you put down your shield, and I'm going to fight you single sword, but I'm going to keep my shield here, right? Like, it's such a drastic change in the proportion of coverage that you have and your opponent has when you're able to get those steps in. And if you try to counter it, right, like, let's say I step into you sword side as a lefty and you're righty, and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to turn into it so my shield stays covered there. You're now giving me your shield shoulder to high cross, right? Because you're turning into the angle that I need to hit that. And so just the way that the closing changes the layout of the fight, I think, is much more impactful, and you really feel it a lot more than when you're fighting someone cross hand.
That makes a lot of sense. Glenn, you want to build on that?
Yeah. So also, quick note to Brazen, who said she wanted to hear me call people dumb. You should watch my How to Kill a 3-Shot Lefty video, because there is a lot of unkind remarks made to people that are dying to 3-shot lefty. So here we've got my lefty here, and we get some righty that comes on the field, right? We can see a lot about how these angles change as the righty closes, because you come straight in, no real change in angles, right? But if you come in to the sword side, you notice that their sword now gets tied up to my shield, or directed more towards my shield, and I'm stepping around. So this really opens up those wider wraps. This is a good way to close, especially if you close with a left-legged step. So you're coming across and now really threatening that hit. It's a good way to get that deep hit. And what you've opened is they can try and go more around you, which isn't going to work out great, right? They can be like, I'm going to come way around here. Or they can throw into your board side, right? So that gives you that. And so there's a strong tendency when you're a lefty or a righty fighting lefty to always want to step around to that weak side, right? But if you step around to the other side, when you close to this side, right? And you come over here, what this does, it allows you to draw a shot. And this becomes especially important if you're a shorter fighter, right? If you're a shorter, like I'm 6'2". There's like, I was fighting Vanson a couple weeks ago. He's taller than me. I hated it. But there aren't many people that are taller than me. But so I don't have to close defensively, but I like to close defensively because there's something satisfying about drawing a shot and then killing them for doing the thing you made them do. And what you can do when you close this way is this encourages them to throw to the outside. And anytime the person does what you want them to do, it's like they told you the plot. You'd be like, well, I already read ahead. I know what to do. I'm going to step in, and you step into the very aggressive block out on this side, right? So you're blocking wide. Your hand should look more like out here with your sword, straight up. So you're ready to block that hit. You're ready to block very forward and aggressively here. And you can draw that shot, and then you can post inside lane, or you can continue past them, moving past. I can't go over past this, paper's on top. But if I go past, right, now I can high cross to that shoulder. I can move around, but by stepping into their shield side, I can draw that attack. So when you're closing, it's never, hey, diddle, diddle, straight up the middle. Right? Mm-hmm. If you do that, you have given them the option to throw around here or to high cross. Mm-hmm. And righties are dumb. They like to high cross. That's going to be their opener. But they might be like, oh, wait a minute. I've had a thought for the first time in my life, and I'm going to follow up on it, throw to the outside. Right? So we have to – sorry. Horus started laughing. It threw off my game here. So we don't have any control over what they're going to do. We've given them options instead of problems, right? Problems instead of, right, now I forget the phrase. But in any case, we gave them something where there's a solution, right? We want to give them something where all options are bad or there's only one option, not where there's multiple good options. Right? Mm-hmm. So we don't want to come straight in. We want to either step to one side so that we have a huge advantage in our attack. They may see it coming, but it's harder for them to deal with. You can also, from there, actually throw across to the shoulder because they will definitely be reading if you step in right, obviously. But they'll be reading a attack here, and you can cross there. But this closing in a non-straightforward fashion is hugely important for controlling the fight and surviving getting in close.
Mm-hmm. And I think you can take that one step further and even add in rotation relative to your opponent, right? Like a lot of the it's kind of hard to see in the stick figure, but what you might be seeing there is as you rotate your shield side toward their sword side, you're getting more frontal coverage. You're making it harder for them to reach around to your sword arm, but then you're exposing that shield side shoulder for the high cross. Mm-hmm. And then counter rotation, pulling your shield shoulder away, makes it less available to hit, but then exposes your sword side. And so if you're tying that rotation into those lateral closing steps, you're now able to control where are the opportunities for my opponent. If I step into you, if I as a lefty step into you as a righty on your sword side, and I'm stepping out so that you're seeing, okay, well, the closest target is now that shield side shoulder, but then I also rotate that away from you. Mm-hmm. I'm taking away opportunities in real time. And so I'll play a lot where I won't have my step be what determines how our final rotation is. I'll actually adjust that based on how you react to my closing step. And so if you want a shoulder, I'm going to take away a shoulder. If you want a hip, I'm going to take away a hip. Mm-hmm. And this is all just ways that rotation can give me extra advantage. There's a concept, and maybe Glen has a name for it. I don't know one, but basically, like, you get a lot more speed or perceived speed by moving lots of things independently. Mm-hmm. If I step, twist, and throw a shot all at once, you're going to see that as one action. Mm-hmm. But if I step, and then while I'm stepping, I start to twist, and then while I'm starting to twist, I then start to throw a shot, you're seeing a lot of things happening. And so it's going to look like I'm doing each of those faster, when in reality, it's just playing with the timing.
Makes sense. A kinetic chain is what Diamandi says.
I really like
Nice.
when you're stepping on them, like I prefer the offensive attack. I'm just short, so I need to get closer to them so I can hit them. And if you ever get your lead foot, like your sword's foot forward and their sword foot forward, if you get your lead foot on the outside lane and my toe is like a little bit past the front of your toe, like, it is very difficult for you to block a shot from me But since I'm on the outside, my shield is in between us.
Yep.
And so I'm more vulnerable to the cross, but then also if you cross on me, then your shield can't block you except by doing this. So now I can just reach around you and hit you. And so that's not always going to work. It's not a hard and fast rule, but that's like a very advantageous position. And so I like to try to fight for that foot position. If I'm like getting my foot around them on the outside, then I'm more likely to be able to hit them than they are to hit me in a way that makes me win. I really like the trying to fight for that kind of position when you're fighting a lefty. And it also, if you're fighting on a field too, because it makes you kind of toilet bowl, you can use that to your advantage to like get past them or kind of put them in a weird spot. Especially if you draw a shot from them too as you close, then they're really screwed, because once your foot is in that position, if they have hit you, then when I'm swinging at them, my hand is basically following their hand, and if my foot position now is outside of them, they basically can't stop me from hitting them. Like, they have to turn their hips really hard to do it, and if they're fast enough to do that, and I start doing this and they turn their hips really hard, then I'm just gonna hit them in the shoulder.
Yeah, I think there's some differences in terms of like the force requirements, right? Like Amp Guard's definitely not light as touch, but it's a lot lighter than Bell and Dag. And so, there's a lot of instances where you may have committed body mechanics that make your shot a lot less blockable in Bell. But in Amp Guard, I can just, reach out and just catch your sword with the tip of my shield, and it'll just stop, right?
Yeah.
Because I have enough stability there. And I think, that's definitely a lot harder to kind of have that similar thing where you can actually, crank a heavier sword into a shot, and it's like, good luck blocking this.
Yeah.
Question from the chat. It's for Horus, but I'm going to ask everybody. When you do this kind of rotation and this kind of footwork, do you have troubles where maybe you step on people's toes? Does that happen?
I actually surprisingly rarely step on other people's toes, but people always step on mine, because I don't back up that often. Yeah. So not really. I hate when people step on my toes. When people step on my toes, I tend to try to block whatever they're doing and then push them. Because I'm already stable because I'm standing on my feet and they're standing on my toes, but they're not stable because they're standing on my toe. And in Belgarth, you can just like throw them on the ground. So if I'm holding my shield and I hit them with my shield, I don't have to control what they do. But yeah, no, not that often. Also, because, like we've been talking about with kind of changing and rotating, I try to always rotate around them in one direction. I prefer like moving right, because against the lefty and against the righty, it just keeps your shield in between each other, and you want to be able to block passively and actively as much as possible so that you don't die.
We've got another ad break coming up soon. So I want to first reach out to the chat and see if we have any additional questions that we can answer while we're in the ad break. Now's your time to ask our two Warlord guests here any questions. And so I'll pitch a weird question at you while some of those, while they might be queuing up some questions, is do you guys have any experience with grappling or bashing as far as like, in those kind of situations that might not necessarily be Amp Guard legal? And if so, is there going to be a difference when you're left-handed? How does that work?
That's a good question. I don't have a lot of experience in bashing or grappling because for me, if I can bash you, I can just hit you with my sword. And I'm very win-oriented. So generally for me, shield bashing or kicking somebody over, anything like that, is something I have to decide I'm going to do instead of killing them. I'm not saying I'm like this unstoppable fighter, I kill everybody, but like, what am I going to try to do? Kill them or, shield bash them? And I have to, in my head, shift gears and be like, no, I'm going to try and shield bash them rather than trying to kill them. So I haven't done very much of it. And for me, the only thing you have to be aware of, and this is more from being in the receiving end, because people try and bash me reasonably often once. And the problem is when you come in to shield bash me, I can hit you anywhere I want, or if I see it coming, I can shank you so hard with a really well-framed stab, right? Or takes on my camera, right? I can get my arm up, I can engage my pecs, I can drive it with my legs, I get a good framing here, so it's going to be really solid, and I can physically stop you if my sword doesn't break, right? That's the biggest thing in my experience to be aware of, is the fact that when you're coming in and you're bringing that board up, right? It's now out. You're no longer using it for defense. You're using it as an offensive weapon. And if the person sees you coming, they're probably going to hit you, right? I have killed, I would say, 90% of the people that shield bash me when I saw them coming, right? People that shield bash me blind, yeah, they just get knocked over. It happens to everybody. But that's the biggest difference. As far as grappling, I don't really. I can't say I don't grapple. I do a little Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm on break from that because I don't have time to go to the gym right now for that. But that I don't like mixing my sports, right? So I like grappling. I think it's super fun. I think it's awesome. But when I'm at a game where I can hit you with a stick, I'd so much rather hit you with a stick that I don't want to do any grappling.
That's fair.
I'm in a similar boat, but my one time going to Battle for the Ring, I had a bit of a rivalry with someone using this two-handed crate club because he hit me in the wrist and it hurt a lot. And I decided, all right, you're going to die. And so the next battle that I see him in, he's legged. I'm sword and shield, and I see him from about 30 feet away. And so I put my shield out. I get up to a nice run. He sees me coming with the shield bash, and he puts up his great club to cross brace. And I move my shield. I have my sword primed behind it, and I just stabbed him in the gut as hard as I could as I ran past him.
I was worried.
Hell yeah. Ad break is over. Go ahead. Sorry.
I love hitting people with my shield. It's really fun, especially when they don't expect it. But if you want to get your organs rearranged, then you should go try to shield check and shield bash left-handed people, especially if they do fencing. Sometimes you will absolutely see stars from getting hit in the stomach. So
hell yeah.
It's not good. It exposes you in every way possible, and they're just gonna hit you. It's really, really good when you're right-handed because their sword hand is right in punching range. So you can just hit their sword hand, and their sword hand doesn't do what it wants to do. It's very bad versus left-hand people, because if you try to punch their sword hand, they just move it and hit you with it.
Yep.
I believe we are on shots and their counters. Somebody did ask during the question break, what's your favorite opener? I figured this would be a good segue into that. Let's take it away for shots and their counters.
I think we've got the typical 3-shot lefty, Glenn, if you want to kick that off.
Yeah. I feel like my short answer is there's a really good video for this. And it's also the old, you can see young Glen. I think I'm like 26 in this video or something. So it's a really old video because I went to this event and someone was like, oh, only 3-shot lefties, blah, blah, blah. And then I saw them get annihilated by those 3 shots, right? There was a lot of smack talk about 3-shot lefties, but then also a lot of dying to lefties. And I was like, we need to teach the righties how to at least kill the 3-shot lefties, so the lefties have to get better and we build the lefty fighting community. Because right now everybody's just crutching on a couple shots. So our 3 shots as a left, I don't remember the 3 shots now.
We've moved past
I said that, and then I was like, wait a minute, what are the core 3? Because I've got a bunch.
It's hip wrap, high cross, and sword shoulder.
Sword shoulder. Okay, I was like, what's the third one? In fact, one of the things we did at the SKBC in Vegas this year was we went through, what did we do? 15 shots to the right forearm, because we're like, there's more than 3 shots. In fact, there's 15 shots just to this target location, right? Because there's a lot of shots, and that wasn't like a whole bunch of setups in the same shot. It was a bunch of different shots. Because there's a lot of ways to hit a person, it turns out. So your 3-shot lefties. 1, you're going to high cross, right? When you do that, you notice my hand instinctively came over, right? Because when I do that, this part of me becomes open, right? And so you do not want to do it as an opener because you'll do this, and they'll go, I in the ribs, right? So generally, there's going to be some sort of setup for that. It can be as simple as a pump down, right? Noah, who's part of Flack, who runs SKBC, he has this great phrase for describing how you throw a feint. And he says you have to sell the tell. Every shot has a tell that is what a skilled fighter keys on to go, ooh, this shot's coming, right? Because you don't actually process the whole thing. There's actually a whole bunch of cool research. If you want to read about it, go to Google Scholar, look up sports and chunking or information chunking, and there's some really cool information about how that works. It applies to all sports. But you're looking to sell the tell of a pump down there. Ooh, I have to bring my guard over, right? And over and down. Or I don't want to throw because he's about to throw into my sword side, so I need to use this side for blocking, something like that, right? And then you're going to high cross, right? The counter to that, of course, is to just bring your shield up a little bit and then hit him in the ribs, right? If you are the lefty or you're a righty throwing this on a lefty, a good thing to do is actually what I talked about earlier, that you throw and you come back. You don't want to come back to guard. You never want to come back when you return from a shot through the same path you threw the shot through. The reason for that is their sword isn't there because you just cleared that space with your hand. So bringing your hand back through that path is not protecting you, right? What you always want to do when you throw a shot is you want to return through the primary return or the primary response. So when I come back to guard, I'm just going to come back to guard. I throw here. The primary response is going to be a shot up here, right? So I'm going to throw the shot, and I'm going to come back to guard across the top and see if I can catch their block here. And if I do, then I'll riposte to the arm. If I don't, then I'll finish returning to guard. Right? So that is our first shot. Our second shot is going to be the basic hip wrap. You're going to throw the hip wrap can be thrown as a shallow wrap where you just come in straight, and then at the end you just lift with your shoulders, brings your arm out. You're basically doing the funky chicken. That puts a little wrap in your sword. Or you can do the full wrap, the fuck your table doorknob wrap, where you throw that full deep wrap. Either one. And the response, the counter to that is to simply put your hand forward, not just back. You don't want to come back and block wide. You want to come forward and block like a 45-degree angle, and you're going to jam out their shot. The reason we come forward to block is you block them when they finish their shot. Their muscle memory says throw, return. Their whole mental process uninterrupted. But if you jam their shot out, that interrupts their muscle memory, and they go throw, return, right? It's not a big delay. It's not even as long as I put it there, right? But this is a game we play really fast. So even that short delay can give you time to jam them out, come back, and throw a shot. So the block is, again, going to be just that forward, about 45 degree away from your body, a very aggressive block. Last is going to be a shot to the shoulder. For me, actually, it might have been the third shot was a stab. So it can either be a straight shot down to the shoulder, where you're looking to get between their sword, especially if they're holding their sword upright, right? Or if they're cocked ready to throw, something like that, and between their board. And if you can just drop that chop, that's going to be a great shot. It's important to note when you're throwing that shot, your body mechanics to generate power have to be different. We'll talk about Tato someday. Tato's not, first, I want to be really clear when I talk about Tato. Tato is an extremely smart man. He has incredible physicality. He's extremely knowledgeable. So I don't want to just say Tato's wrong, I disagree with him. What I really want to do is I want to say Tato's wrong, and here's my experimental science to back it up. So
something about him being right-handed.
This electromyography stuff for some of my equipment I have back here, and I'm going to eventually, probably not this year because I'm working on my dissertation, but eventually I want to actually do a full study of what muscles are involved in generating shots and how we throw shots. And then I can say Tato's wrong because there's science. Or I might say Tato's right, Glen's wrong. But I would like to know. But I don't believe he's fully right. So big caveat in there because I really don't want people to think I'm talking shit about Tato because one, he's bigger than me and I'll get hurt. And two, I have a lot of respect for him. There's a good chance he's right and I'm wrong, and I want to know who it is. And we do that with science. But in any case, the mechanics I will throw is not a rotational mechanic, right? Not the same way you throw a punch where you're rotating, driving off the outside leg, you're bringing it. Because if you do that, your shot angle is going to either go diagonally or you're going to have to bring your hand this way to counteract the fact your body's going that way, right? Because two curves we cancel out. If we do the math, we get a straight line. So what we want to do is we want to change to a forward motion. It's a weight shift, right? You are bringing your lats to pull your arm down, and you're just pulling straight down. You can generate a lot of power with a very short stroke there by bringing that weight forward. You can do it with a step, but you're dropping your weight.
With the step.
That's one of our two power generation patterns, and the only two we use in foam fighting or SAS in my general experience. The other one is just using raw muscle if you're big enough. If you want to learn a lot more about power generating patterns, Shadow is a warlord in Wetlands, here local to me. He's also a 10th degree black belt in ninjutsu. And like the last 3 belts, you have to go to Okinawa, whatever, somewhere in Japan,
Whoa.
right? And like there's this convocation of masters who meet, and they determine whether not just you are good enough, but your students are good enough to represent you for you to get the next dan.
Wow.
And he actually got his 9th and 10th dans when I was trying to get my 9th and 10th Orders of the Warrior. And he got his before I got my Orders of the Warrior. And it made me feel really bad. This guy, who's also a warlord, an extremely accomplished martial artist, was getting real world Order of the Warrior equivalents faster than I could get fake game Order of the Warriors.
Wait, is Shadow the person that I've heard the story that he chased down rabbits for fun until they gave up? I assume it's an urban legend.
I don't think so.
Okay.
He is the guy who hunts, he and his wife hunt, and his wife once strangled a deer to death. And if you've ever seen deer, they have great big necks.
What the fuck?
Because, well, she shot it, was wounded, right? And she didn't want to spend the money on a bullet because it was cheaper just to kill it with their bare hands.
Shadow and Raiden are built fucking different. Oh, where did Glen go? Glen disappeared.
Jesus Christ.
Glen disappeared for a little bit. Hopefully his laptop didn't blow up. Shadow and Raiden are absolutely built different. They've come and hung out with me in St. Louis before. They're very dangerous. Like if there's a zombie apocalypse, they're who you go hang out with because they're going to keep you alive. Well, they'll probably shoot you on your way in because they want to stay alive, but they're who you go hang out with. I think we lost Glen. Oh, Glen is back. Okay. Glen, welcome back.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say the key to surviving Frank and Raiden is they will always tell you once, don't do that. That's a terrible idea. And if you're dumb enough to ignore a very clearly spoken warning, then you're going to die.
Unlikely.
Because then you get one warning, and then it's game on.
Let's hustle things along. Raph, what do you got to say about shots and openings?
So I think there's the 3-shot lefty stereotype for a reason. Is that most righties just don't know how to handle it, and I'll even kind of like go one step behind and say 2-shot lefty. Like you can leave out the threat to the sword arm on a righty and just go for sword side hip and shield side shoulder, and almost 80% of the righties out there are already going to be stumped. But if you think about it from like a quadrant perspective, right? Like imagine my tunic just has this big plus sign on it, and you're saying, okay, here's a sword side shoulder target on my opponent, here's a sword side hip target, here's a shield side shoulder. A lot of the shots that lefties are going to use or righties can use against lefties are just kind of getting fancier and getting more options on targeting those 3 quadrants. Very few shots that lefties use are going to target that shield side hip on a righty, and it's a pretty low percentage for righties doing it against lefties. And so if you think about like those 3 basic shots from the 3-shot lefty, and then just go beyond, right? What can I do to evolve that? That gets into a lot of the more advanced shots that you'll see lefties doing. I remember watching the video that Glen put out on how to throw a feint as a lefty, and it's like pretend to high cross, put your sword hand where their sword's going to be coming at you, block it, hit them in the arm, and like the reality of that for me is people are so wound up and ready to throw something when they're fighting me because they know I'm decently fast that I won't get my hand there to block in time, because as soon as I go to high cross, they're already just like flailing a shot out at me. And so like my evolution for that is I start the shot and then I just go straight into the third side shoulder because I know it's going to be open by the time my hand's out there. There's a bunch of like variations on the wraps that we do. Glen described like the really basic kind of horizontal wrap that comes into your opponent's sword side hip. I throw a lot of rising wraps. So the idea is that I'm actually letting the blade of my sword fall below the plane where my hand is, and coming up into the sword side hip. And what that does is it means even if you stuff out and low, unless your pommel is touching your leg, I can probably snake my sword up there and still hit you in the hip. And so there's a lot of like these evolutions that have come out of the basics, but I think, you know, we shouldn't be too quick to poo-poo the 3-shot lefty, because it worked well enough to give lefties a reputation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that really makes sense.
Oh, I mentioned too, you mentioned, this made me think of this, don't hold your sword by the pommel. I hate that so much, right? One, it can't be comfortable. Two, it's squishy, so it'll give you some shot lag as the sword rocks in your hand. Not a lot, but again, this game's played in a fraction of a second. And third, you don't have any blocky down here. Hold your sword by the handle like a proper adult. You'll have a little bit of pommel down here. And then when you go to block, if they're coming in low, you can catch things on the pommel as well. So don't hold by the pommel, hold by the handle. Also, your sword will feel so much better balanced. It'll feel lighter. It'll feel faster. I play Amtgard with what are effectively dag-weighted swords. Because I build swords that are durable, because I find a lot, and I hate building swords. So I build swords that last forever. And that means they weigh more, right? Because I'm not going for ultralight stuff. Mm-hmm. And I can still, like, I'm a slow anyway. But I can still fight with that because I'm holding it properly and I've got proper balance.
Thank you so much. It needed to be said.
Horus, is pommel fighting... Is pommel fighting a thing in Bell? Like, I don't feel like
everybody fucking does it.
Really?
I mean, I'm sorry, I love all of you, but everybody's like, why don't you just hold your sword lower? I'm like, because that's not where the handle is.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Whoosh is the only person that I've seen do it.
To pommel fight too.
Interesting.
So as a lefty, I've actually developed a shot to take advantage of people who do that. Glenn, you'll have to try this out and let me know how it works for you. I will throw from guard a fairly high force, what I call a half flat wrap, as in I will go into like the rotation, the outward rotation for the wrap, but then I don't close it all the way in. So it's the first half, but it lands flat with, you know, my hand perpendicular to the ground, and I'm aiming for basically where the pommel should be. Like aiming for a wristwatch. And the amount of people that it just snipes just past the hand because they don't have a substantial pommel to block there is amazing.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's all because people want more reach. If you're in Bell or Dag, can you just make a slightly longer sword? They don't have length restrictions like Amtgard does. And if you're in Amtgard, take a 1-inch step. Move your feet. You should be moving your feet anyway. So yeah, I actually have the shot that we talked about at SKBC, that little flick up, right? I do that in part when people are pommel holding. And also I like it because it makes them feel like they weren't ready, because it's such an embarrassing way to get killed. Anybody who dies by it, even if they said they're ready and knew they were ready, it gives them the sense of, I wasn't ready.
Yeah. People do it for reach. Like, I understand on flails, because if you have a flail, you're probably not going to try to block with it anyway. Like, you're just going to block with your shield and try to just snipe them from really far away. But with swords, that's exactly where you're doing it. You don't have a red sword. You know, you don't want to weight it like a red sword. So you have your max 47 inches, and then you have your pommel is made out of something that's like, you can really hold, and then you get basically an enter to a reach, swinging it at them. But people, again, that are doing that aren't intending to ever block with their sword usually. If you're intending to like block and or close and not just try to snipe people, I don't recommend holding your sword by your pommel.
And especially in a tournament setting, like a one-on-one fight. I think it's different if you're in a line and you're reliant on the shield of the guy next to you to cover that side. But to Glenn's point, if more foam fighters took a 1-inch step forward, they would be a lot better.
Yeah.
That 1-inch step does a lot, and it gets ignored much too often.
I got to keep things moving along. Horus, you got anything to add on shots? Any favorite shots you like to throw in lefties?
No, except that, like, I mean, the stab is nice too.
Yeah.
I think that you can just be a 3-shot lefty or like a 4-shot lefty. If you can then stab them too, so you always threaten here, low, and here, because you're really not probably going to throw to shield bottom of the shield quadrant. Like that's pretty good.
I like doing a thing where I'll try to get them to high cross on me, and then I'll fade my shoulder away, and as I'm fading, I'll follow up and hit their arm as they're coming.
Sick.
As they're coming in for the shoulder, and that keeps me a little bit, because I got short arms, so that keeps me a little bit protected, and try to keep the combat in my space instead of theirs. Lefty versus lefty.
Oh, well, we can't go on until we mention dark sides.
Mention dark side. Let's talk dark sides.
Yeah. So because there's a couple things about the dark side that are important, right? One is a lot of times when you're fighting someone who's a lefty or righty, they start cheating their board way over because they're like, all the attacks are coming over to my sword side, my shield's coming over here. And so I came up with the dark side because I wanted to punish people who are like, I'm guarding over here, right? Mm-hmm. And it opens up that side, and it does attack. You can throw it coming up and attack the shoulder. You can throw wide, attack the hip. But it gives you some options to attack the side that they don't expect any shots on. Mm-hmm. One of the things I always tell people when they're learning fighting is part of what you're trying to do is complicate your opponent's problem space. If they know all the shots are coming here, they're not thinking about here, and you've made their job easier. If they have to think about shots coming everywhere, they have more things to think about, and they can't think about they can't think about everything. So you'll be able to find holes in what they're thinking about. Mm-hmm. So that's basically my quick commercial for dark sides. And righties should definitely be throwing dark sides on lefties because it happens so rarely. I used to, Anatol's retired now, but Anatol is a fighter out in New Mexico, incredibly talented fighter. And I would see him about twice a year. And every time I fought him, he would open up with the dark side. And he would always get 2 free kills that way. And then I would remember, oh, right. Because those were the only 2 dark sides I got thrown on any given year because they were so rare. And if you're a righty and you have a competent dark side, you can probably get at least 1 free kill on every lefty because they'll be like, oh shit, righties throw that. So that's my comment on dark sides. And last but not least, because I'm going to keep you from moving on too quickly because I'm a total boat anchor. We talked about leg shots. Leg shots are important, and there's a good way to throw them as a lefty, right? A lot of people want to throw because they're used to throwing forehand shots, right? The problem is if I throw forehand, I've now opened up this side. Right? So what I will throw as a lefty fighting a righty is I will throw a backhand. I will come across this way, right? Mm-hmm. And since I'm coming across, I can come back up to guard, and if they throw at me, I can hit the leg and get it. Right? I will also throw that as a retreating motion. If I'm throwing a shot, I can throw that leg, come back to guard as I'm moving back. That's also how I complete the dark side, is I will throw dark side, and then I will come back with my hand across, not necessarily going for the leg, but coming for that low block. But those backhand shots are very important because they bring your hand from out of guard into guard. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's going to be an important thing when you're throwing legs. Because definitely throw legs. Leg the crap out of people. Everybody deserves to be legged. Just don't leg them and then run away and leave them bored on the side of the field. If you leg somebody, it's your moral obligation to kill them.
Love this.
Right, now I'm ready to move on.
Raph's torch is starting to glow. It's burning a little bit here in all these leg shots.
I was just going to mention, unless you see someone wearing this, then you don't have to leg them.
You should.
Lighting torches is, I would admit, one of my favorite things to do because they all have different sad faces.
Gotta collect them all.
And they always look so disappointed in you too. They're like, I can't believe you did that. I thought you were a better quality person than this, and you have hit me in the leg like a true, troglodyte.
I'm pretty sure I double leg killed Delos when he had traveled up to St. Louis to give me my Warlord. And he looked at me with like a tear in his eye, but he didn't say anything.
Oh my god.
Lefty versus lefty. Let's talk about it.
I mean, lefty on lefty violence is illegal. So first off, don't do it. But there are times where, I run into Glen in the ditch and one of us has to die. I think there's two things that come to mind is like, the obvious one is lefty on lefty is like righty on righty, where we have no experience doing it. Yeah. You can make all sorts of jokes about how ugly it's going to look because, we're now the ones having to fight the lefty that we never do. But a lot of the fundamental righty on righty stuff can be mirrored over. Like when I started fighting better lefties, I was looking at, what shots are righties doing, what steps are righties doing, how are they killing other righties. And the more unique side of it that I like talking about is that lefties have a preference to fight righties with our lefty versus righty shot. And so those are going to be the more predictable favorites when you're fighting a lefty. So for example, when I'm fighting righties a lot, I'm throwing that sword side hip. Well, against a lefty, that's just now a shield side hip, right? And so I'm going to throw that a whole lot more on other lefties than a righty, the average righty on righty, just because I'm already doing that so much more. I'm so much more comfortable with that shot. I know it's, a higher percentage shot. And so I think like the big difference between righty versus righty and lefty versus the lefty is typically going to be what we prefer to throw, not what is available to us.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, my comments on lefty. First of all, if you see another lefty on the field and you're a lefty, go get some fighting in. Because especially for the better lefties, a lot of time the good lefty in the field is you. So like when I go to Spring War and I see Raf or I see other lefties there who are really good fighters, I'm like, oh my God, I got to get some fights in with them, because that's your chance to hone your skills against people who are also lefties, and theirs too. There are a couple differences. The biggest one being that lefties, because they're used to being attacked on their sword side, are way better at blocking their sword side with their sword. Right? Mm-hmm. My dark side percentage against lefties is like 10% of my dark side percentage against righties. And the dark side should work better on people who are the same handedness of you, right? If you're a righty, you should dark side every righty, right? I once saw, I think it was Leaf, go through and just dark side like 30 people in a row, right? Righty on righty. Because you're attacking their sword side in a way they're not used to. But when you're fighting a lefty, a lot of them are so used to that instinctive sword side block. There's like block, block, block. So that's a thing to be aware of. They're much more focused on the sword side block than the shield side block. The other thing I discover when I'm fighting a lot of lefties is you can make them high cross. And then you can throw a torch counter, right? It's actually a shot that I'm pretty sure the torches came up with. All props to Raf's company. But basically what you do is you throw a high cross, but you don't try and reach over, right? A lot of times people are going deep. They're going for that back sword side shoulder, right? I don't, because there are guards here. If they're smart, they've brought it up so that it's, blocking that high cross. And I throw into not the top of their sword. I throw into their palm. Well, if they don't have a palm, I just hit them in the wrist and win. But if they're holding it properly, I hit them in the palm, right? And the reason for that is I want them to high cross over my shot. If I throw my sword above theirs, their sword's under mine, and to high cross, they have to come out and under, or they're already under. They may push me out, open me up. But I want to throw under, so they try and reach over, right? And then what you do is you block high very aggressively to push their hand up even further, and then you throw anything that's longer than a pen, except this empty root beer bottle. So then you throw, right? And the shot you're throwing is going to be just a straight tip down, right? And what you're looking to do, that root beer bottle was not as empty as I thought it was. So I'm going to have to wash my tunic now. I got one drop of root beer on it. But in any case, what you're looking to do is you're looking to land the shot here. So your sword is going to be vertical, tip down, hand up, and you're going to hit them right under the arm because they have brought their arm up to high cross, and you're going to come inside their board. Their board's right here. But notice there's a little gap here, right? And you're going to throw that shot and hit them here. Right? And that's the shot I first learned from the torches, and I'm pretty sure they came up with that as a counter to high crossing. Instead of going over, you go under and send them up to God.
If you're right-handed and you want to learn to throw that shot, you should just watch any video with Bell fighting in it, because he throws that shot as his bread and butter, and it's disgusting.
He pulls that off against me as a lefty, and I hate it.
He's so good at it. It's just crazy.
Is Coat another person that throws that shot a lot?
Coat does throw that shot a lot, yes. Coat's very good at it.
And is that a Molinier?
No, Molinet is when you block like a hanging guard and then you come back down.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It's hard to do lefty versus a lefty as a righty, but you can use that versus a righty. If you bait them and like, oh, my shield's open, and then you're like, bam, and hit him in the arm. It's really good.
They're asking, Amish Ninja is asking for us to describe the shot one more time. They They want to. They didn't.
A
quite
Molinet
pick-
or the?
the one Glenn was
slot.
talking about.
Yeah, so this is like a cross slot, and the idea is like if you look at your opponent as a large shield and a sword, and now this is for cross match, right? So righty on righty or lefty on lefty, whereas a high cross is looking to go up and over. We're now looking to go up to fake the up response, and it's an inside slot. So you're coming between their sword and their shield to hit your opponent.
I throw that on Florentine all the time. I'll kind of pump out or something like that
Yep.
and get him to widen, and I'll just come right in through the body.
Yep.
It's almost like a really deep flat wrap. Like you put your
Yeah.
hand up into the
Mhm.
block and then just flat wrap in.
Yeah, and you're
Like pronate
activating
your
your
elbow.
shoulder to do this motion, right? So they should be able to feel a lot of activation up here as you're bringing that arm up, right? Horus had a really good, like, at least from where it looked on mine, Horus was just spot on for that angle.
Yeah, you don't actually want to like throw your whole shoulder. You're just flat
Yeah.
wrapping.
Yeah,
Like
you're just
under.
raising your arm.
Mhm.
We're about out of time. Any last words on lefty versus lefty combat?
Don't be afraid to come up from the ground, like what. Maybe not like a full dark side, but just like a lot of that motion. Even just like the underhand flick into sword arm, those kind of things.
Mhm.
Lefties are not used to that at all.
Okay.
Shield side wrap too, because like you're already used to throwing it, but if you're left-handed fighting another left-handed person, like righties shield wrap each other all the time, so they're going to be ready. But I watch a lot of left-handed people, and they get into the high cross war, because you just don't do it as much, but you know that shot. But if you have a good shield wrap, like it's so much less practice, you'll just murder other lefties with it.
Yeah, my last comment's actually going to be breaking the mold of what you normally tell fighters, and that my advice is now you can forehand hit him in the leg. So take advantage of that variety and throw a forehand chop to the leg.
Glenn, where do you get your PhD in?
So my PhD, the general field is computer science. I'm here at Texas A&M University, but my specific area of research is in the human-computer interaction effects of telepresence robotics. In other words, how does using a robot avatar change the way people interact?
Interesting. Okay.
And so and other accoutrements with that. So like we have a virtual reality gesturing system, and one of the things we found is that when you have that virtual shared gestural space, rather than having to have your hands impede the same space, people who are physically touch avoidant, right, are willing to share that space with you and gesture and point at things. So if you're working on a project together, it's easy to say, what about, and I'm pointing like you can see because I got the camera, but like, what about this one? Well, no, this one, right? Whereas if they're physically avoidant and you're co-located in the same space, as soon as you reach in, they move back, right? So that's just one example of the things we've found. So that's a way we can potentially change the way we design the robots, or in potential use case, potentially people that are physically touch avoidant may learn better in a case where you've got a virtual option instead of the physical, giant Glen reaching into your personal space.
Oh, that's amazing, man. That's super awesome. Chat is blowing up. They think it's all super cool as well. I want to thank Warlord Glen, Warlord Raf. Thank you guys so much. We're not closing out the show just yet. Glen, Raf, feel free to stick around if you want. We've got a couple things to go over before we close out the show. But I really appreciate you guys coming on here and sharing this with us, and sharing your wisdom as being lefty fighters. We're all just a bunch of dumb righties, so I really appreciate you guys coming in here and doing that for us.
Yeah, my pleasure. And shout out for SKBC. If you want to learn fighting, even if you don't want to learn from lefties, there's 100%. A lot of good instructors there.
100%. If there's one event outside of, I'll always recommend Get and Knockfest, but if there's one event I could recommend anyone going to, it's SKBC. You're gonna get better at fighting. It's just gonna happen.
Yeah, that's actually my plug too. Go to SKBC. It is not only is it good for fighting, it's just the single most fun event if you're into fighting, because everybody's there to fight. Fighting goes on. They have the fight designed around fighting, so there's good meals that are full of protein and carbs, so you have energy to fight. There's plenty of light for fighting at night. You can fight in the morning. You can fight in the afternoon. You can fight in the evening. There's always people looking for fights. There's people that want to talk about fighting. Best event ever. Other than that, if you want to get good, the other good thing is just travel. Like I just came back from Denver, where I went up to do some fighting. Got to fight some people I haven't fought. Some of them ever. Some of them just in a long time. Go around and travel. I travel a ton for fighting, and it's always worth it. So much fun.
My mom wants to go to SKBC. Hey, that works. SKBC for the chat. It has not been announced yet. I'm really trying to be able to break the announcement here on the bench. So, doing my best. We'll see what happens. I'll say where it is as soon as it's announced anyway. But trying to make it here first. We'll see. Thank you guys. Next step, we're gonna do some promos. And we've got 3 different WWE style promos that people submitted to be, for Ockfest, which is now past. But we ended up canceling the Ockfest episode, so we're showing them after the fact, but that's okay. And this is kind of a battle royale because the 2 winners of this contest at some point in the future are going to be able to be hosts on the bench for an episode. So we're gonna have them on. We're gonna learn their whole story, and that's gonna be the prize for winning. So, Horus, I've not figured out how you can watch these in real time. Maybe if you want to pull up the stream and you can watch them that way.
Always.
Perfect. So here we go. This first one is from Mac Truck. Are we ready for Mac Truck? Here we go.
Listen up, mammals. Wackosaurus got something to say. I put my blood, bone, and scales into where I got to where I am today. I have traveled all over fractured Pangea, stomping holes in the ground, putting bodies in them. I am the Jurassic ass kicker. I am the Mesozoic freak of nature. I am the pound for pound monster, and nothing can stop me. Not your blues, not your greens, not even your reds. Hell, not even your projectiles can touch me, because I already survived one big rock. And after that, all of y'all look like pebbles to me. So in case you mammals wasn't listening, the name's Wackosaurus, and I'm gonna take the prize and leave you with mist in your eyes.
We're gonna let it catch up a little bit.
Amazing. This is so good.
Are you supposed to be muted?
Oops. Sorry, guys. I wanted to mute it because I'm watching it on my phone as well. Since we're watching it on the stream ourselves, it's going to take us a second for us to catch up. So there's going to be a little bit of silence while me and Horus are finishing watching them. But here we go. Pickles is the next one. This one is from Pickles. Here we go.
Hi, Tanith. Sir Pickles of Dragonspire here. I just wanted to reach out to you and Horus and let you guys know that I appreciate all the hard work you put into making such an entertaining show. It has me looking forward to every single Thursday night. I've watched every episode so far, and what? No, I'm just making a thank you video because I like the show. Because it contest, wrestling promo, guest host. Kenneth! After I introduce myself to you at Oktoberfest 2024 in beautiful Billy Creek Village, I am going to properly introduce my sword to your ass. And after I've finished that, I'm gonna do the same thing to that clown of a co-host of yours. And after that, it is open season on everyone on that field. I look forward to it.
That was phenomenal. Okay, that was Pickles. That was fantastic.
This is so good.
Last one, we've got Cord. Here comes Cord.
I didn't watch that before Oktoberfest. It would have been terrifying.
Warlord Tanny, you thought you were safe in the light, but the lights cast shadow, and the shadow is my domain. Feel that chill down your spine. Hear that cackling in the dark. Feel, see, smell, see the shadow on the moon. That's me. They used to whisper about the woolly man, that demon in the dark. But now they whisper my name. I ended him, just as I will end you.
The Wish.com Necrogoblin. I'm done. I'm fucking done.
I am the terror that creeps in when the lights go out. I am a dream turned back. I am Rashmish's chosen. I am the dark. I'm coming for you, little daddy. When you step onto the fields at Ockfest, know this. I'm watching. I'm waiting. You are not facing a fighter. You are facing your worst nightmare. And there's no waking up. Beware the shadows, little daddy, for they have a name. Dark Godly.
Oh boy. So that was Cord. Cord got paid by the minute on that one. That was fantastic. I don't know that I can make a decision just yet, and I don't know if you can make a decision just yet either.
Already.
I
Those are
feel
all
like
great.
I feel like we're gonna have to announce the winners next week on the bench. In the meantime, we got ad break is coming up. I'm gonna wait to make our announcement first. Even though let's bring them back on screen. Before we close things out during our ad break right now, I want to thank again Glen and Raf for joining us. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. And then we're gonna talk about what else we got. We got Goblin Story Time every Tuesday. Goblin Story Time has taken a break for the last 2 weeks because of Ockfest, but I believe, Cord, don't quote me on this, but I believe that we are starting Goblin Story Time again this coming Tuesday. So every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central here on the Bench Twitch Network. Goblin Story Time is an hour of Belgar stories narrated by Master Chronicler Cord. And then before we make our announcement, since we're still in an ad break, this is your last chance to get your bench booties. Order your bench booties today. I will post the link. you can use promo code GAT for a $5 discount. Mod, are we still in an ad break, or are we good to go? Are we ready for the big announcement? We're about to find out. Big announcement coming. It doesn't say we're in an ad break on mine, so I think we're good. Ads for another 45 seconds. All right. So, not yet. Killing time. We got to kill time. Man, I'm going to turn these ads. I might have to turn these ads down a little bit if I can. I'll give it a shot. We still got 30 seconds,
Always.
20 seconds, 10 seconds. We're almost there. Almost there. Big announcement. Drum roll. Drum roll. We good? We good? Maybe? I think we're good. I'm going to assume we're good. 10 seconds. 10 seconds. This is the most inopportune ad break.
Yeah. I don't know that I need to sucker people into more fights at events, though.
Oh, you
Usually,
definitely
I,
have.
like,
We're
can't
clear.
fit everybody in.
That's a huge problem, actually.
Yeah.
Here's the big announcement. We have a new show coming out on Sundays, introducing the Bench Recap, an interactive show starring myself and occasionally Horus. Horus said that he's going to be there for our inaugural show and probably the one after that. In this show, the hosts and the audience, that's you guys, we talk about what we did this weekend in relation to Belgarth. I didn't want to. I already got Horus for an entire night out of his life. I'm not going to do it twice.
Yeah, sorry guys, I have to do other stuff.
I'm recently single. I got a lot of time on my hands. So the idea is that if we went to an event that weekend, we're going to do a show. We're going to talk about the event. We're going to, and that's what we're going to talk about this coming show, even though it was a week prior. We're going to talk about Ockfest. We're basically going to do a recap of Ockfest. And, there's going to be some weekends where we didn't go to an event, and I'll still be doing the show. That's an opportunity for you guys to talk about the events that you went to and chat, tell stories, and stuff like that. It's not going to be as long. It's going to be like a 30-minute or a 1-hour show. And then in addition to that, if nobody went to an event, we also talk about what we did to work on our fighting, that week. So if you did a practice, if you learned a new shot, bring it to the Bench Recap and let's talk about it. Let's unpack it. Let's all learn together. That's kind of the idea. So that's the big announcement. The Bench Recap on Sundays. We're going to recap the past week as far as our sword fighting goes. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk about Oktoberfest. It was a really good event.
Oh, it was so good. And that's honestly, us talking about Oktoberfest was how I came up with this. I was like, because I really like talking to you specifically about events and what we did and all this kind of stuff. And so I thought, let's just make a show out of it. Let's get everybody involved and give them an opportunity to talk to. Yes, you will have a Sunday show to help you become less of a relic. And I also know a lot of people aren't able to make the bench on Thursdays, and they watch it after the fact and stuff like that. So I wanted to give people an opportunity to be involved and watch a show live if they'd like. So thank you for coming to the bench. Thank you for checking it out. Instead of our usual outro, I'm actually going to play the new intro for the bench recap. So,
okay.
So a little bit shorter of an outro, but thanks for joining us. Thanks for our guests. Thank you, Horus. And I will see you guys on Sunday. Catch you then. Thank you for joining the bench. And remember, be nice to yourself.